If you're interested in how highly successful investors overcome limitations and become unstoppable forces of success, you're in the right place. The Conscious Investor podcast features weekly conversations with real estate investing experts and delivers a Monday Mindset episode to help launch your week with intention. If you believe success is for everyone willing to think, then do, these conversations will be your weekly rocket fuel. Have you noticed that there is a lot of uncertainty in the world? I hear reports about the war, right, in the Ukraine. I hear about the stock market that is just taking a nosedive, right? Oh, and then it rebounds and then it dives again. It's like this dysfunctional relationship. And then I hear, people in the real estate sector, oh my gosh, are we in a bubble? What's going to happen? The recession's coming and we're getting these reports of inflation. It's like the highest inflation gains since 1981. We haven't seen things like this before. Interest rates are rising. We could go on and on and on about all of this uncertainty that we are facing in the world today. If you're feeling the burden of that and a concern about, oh my gosh, all of these things are happening and you're feeling like the world is imploding basically, and you better basically go get in a bunker or something. I don't know, but for a lot of people right now, this time is feeling very suffocating. And I want to share with you today 3 ways to kind of overcome and work through that type of anxiety. Now, a little backstory for me is that from me to you is that I lived most of my life wrapped in fear, and my life was driven by fear. So much so that when my husband and I got married, actually probably before he got married, we had this little pact, and it was no fear-based decisions, because bad decisions come from fear-based decisions more often than not. More often than not, we're not willing to step into uncertainty. When we are consumed by fear, we're not willing to take that next step. And it would have been the next best step and it would have worked out well, but we are looking at life through these fear-based eyes. And so our decisions become not our very best decisions. And so my husband and I had that, saying no fear-based decisions. We still talk about that. And so fear is everywhere. When I was growing up in the type of environment I grew up in and naturally being bent towards fear, I thought the end of the world was literally going to come. An antichrist was going to take over the world. I know that sounds really dramatic, but in my kid eyes, with the type of information I was hearing, that's what I was hearing. I'll date myself, but UPC codes to scan at the grocery store had just come out. It's oh my gosh, that's going to be the mark of the beast. They're going to use this, all of this thinking. And I lost so much of my childhood because I was living in fear. Now, fear can be healthy. There is always a level healthy fear that we can have. But when it starts to consume and dictate our life and the quality of our life, now it's crossed the line and it's now dysfunctional fear. And I think that a lot of people are afraid. They're afraid for their families. What's the world going to be like for our kids? What's the world going to be like for our grandkids? Will we have a legacy to pass down to our kids to help them out? Oh my gosh, how hard is their life going to be? What will the world look like? Oh, is there going to be a one world order? All of these things could just become this consuming thought in our brains. So I told you I'm going to give you three questions to ask yourself. And the first question is this: is this in my control? In my early 20s, I went through a lot of hard knocks and had to grow up in other ways. And at that time, Desert Storm was taking place, and it's just all of this other uncertainty on top of my personal life uncertainty. It was just a really crazy time. And I came to that point where I finally had to ask myself, is this in my control? Because it would have just simply overwhelmed me. And a lot of people are walking around overwhelmed right now because we're not supposed to carry all these burdens on us. We're not supposed to be hauling this bag of all the world problems on our own shoulders. And so we have to ask ourselves, like, is this in my control? Do I have influence in in the outcome of the situation? Do I have influence in the outcome in Ukraine? I don't have any influence there. I'm sure some of you are hearing that and you're like, you do, you could boycott and you could do this and that. And like, in all reality, do I have a significant influence? And when we do have a ability to influence a decision or an outcome, then are we using it? As soon as we check those boxes and we're like, okay, anything that I could potentially possibly do in this, I am already taking action on, done. It's off my plate, out of our hands. Almost like things around the house, right? My husband and I will have projects and it's like, okay, well, I can't do anything past this is my part of the project. And I don't know how to do the next part of the project, but here you go, honey. And so similar to that, I just release it. And so take time, find what's in your control. If you can do something, do something. But if you can't, release it. Free yourself of a burden that isn't yours to be, you can't bear it. Like, you might as well enjoy life, right? Okay. Second point that I'd like to say is, what am I thinking? And this is really a chicken or egg thing with number one. And so what are you actually thinking? What are you allowing to go on between your ears? Because a lot of times we tell ourselves these stories about how horrible it's going to be. Like when I was a kid, I was like, oh, well, here's a story of my life. I'm not going to live to see age 12. There's going to be some one world order, and, everybody with my faith is going to be, beheaded or something, like, right. I had this thinking that was going on in my head, and I wasn't controlling those thoughts. And I'd let those thoughts like just go out of control. And right now, you might be doing the exact same thing. These thoughts might just be exploding. And the more we feed that narrative and feed that story, the more embellished and larger it becomes, until it's this insurmountable, just that's what occupies the mind. And you can see that right now in our culture. A lot of people are living like that. It's like in the US with political parties, it's like in different ways of living and such, people are just creating these massive stories and projecting so much into the world that's not there. As we are a product of our thinking. So if your thinking is off, you're going to really have a miserable time in life. Maybe step back. I like to step back. Is it me? Am I adding something here? Am I reading into this too much? What am I projecting onto this? Where could this person be coming from? What questions should I ask them? Get really curious about, where is this going to lead? Okay. By the way, Michael Neal, who I love, I always reference Michael Neal, and I don't have a fully aligned worldview. Like, my Christian faith is different than a large part of his worldview from everything I've read and listened to. And yet his podcast and his book and such, I'm looking over to my bookshelf over there. But all of that actually just like helps support what I'm like trying to grow into, right? Like, I am in my faith, it's, hey, take your thoughts captive. Like the Bible says that cover to cover, take your thoughts captive. Every time, what are you thinking? And so anyhow, I like that Michael Neal is always, talking about, you are a product of your thinking. The world that you create begins in your thinking. So the world might not be as bad as you think, or definitely not as bad as the news presents. By the way, if you're listening to the news, just turn it off. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, I could go off on that. That's a whole nother tangent, right? But we're not going to go there today. And here's the final thing. Once you have those things secured, right? Once you're like, okay, I know that this is outside of my control or it's in my control and I can take this action. And once you've cleared up that thinking mess, now you get to go into a position of opportunity. And this is that third question. That third question then is, how can I get ahead on this? Because guess what? There's an opportunity. Every moment in history has massive opportunity. In 2008, there was massive opportunity. It was a really difficult time, terrible, some people would say, for a lot of people. But it was also a time of massive opportunity. Even more recently, right? The pandemic. That was a really difficult time for so many people around the world. And yet it opened up all of this opportunity that was unprecedented before. I mean, just take the amount of people that can work from home now, right? And so with every moment there is an opportunity. And when we are thinking clearly and we're owning the things that we should own, the things that are in our control, now we can start seeing and identifying the opportunities that we can take in order to, lead to the life that we want to live. So the opportunity abounds and it is endless. And it's that way, especially when you get rid of the wrong thinking and when you get rid of fear-based decisions. So as you go about your week this week, start enjoying. Right now, I'm listening to cows outside. I'm looking out my window at like sunshine for the first time in a really long time. It's amazing. And right, so you have all these opportunities and the beauty abounds. You get to decide what comes into your thinking and what comes into your life, what you enjoy and what you disdain. So you decide, you call the shots. Love to hear your feedback on this. If you need support, I have a couple of coaching spots that I opened up. I was recently at a conference, and while I was at that conference, I noticed that there were people that really needed more support. And so I opened up a little more, a few more coaching spots in my schedule. So if you would like support with that, just head over to the 3 Keys Investment website and schedule a strategy session with me, and we can see if that's a great fit. Remember, adventure belongs on the trail, not in your investing and not in your thinking. Until next time, live big, love bigger.